SANCCOB was started in 1968 by Althea Westphal. Since those early days, SANCCOB has grown into a multi-dimensional organization, but at the heart of the organization remains our passion to care for African penguins and other seabirds. When SANCCOB started, it was pretty much a reactive response to whatever was happening. Over the years, we've looked at this and said, how can we make our services better and be more proactive in the way that we can be more ready when things are going to hit, because with spills, with things like that, you can't predict them. So we do a lot of training. What we've done in the last while is we have taken our training and we've formalized it. And we share that with a lot of people in our field, in the environmental sector. People can't love what they don't know, so we spend a lot of time educating, especially children, and children that live by the sea and may not even have been to the sea, but they live in the proximity of it. They can't love a bird if they don't know where it fits into the whole chain of things.
SANCCOB is primarily a rehabilitation facility for seabirds. So we are looking after all the seabirds that we see along the southern African coast. The birds that we see either come into us oiled or injured or sick, as well as abandoned chicks that we rear. Once a bird is at SANCCOB, it goes through an admitting process. We give it a number. So every single seabird is an individual that we look after. They get extra vitamins, they get electrolyte solution, and once they're in SANCCOB, they undergo rehabilitation in terms of us giving their fluids to correct any dehydration and feeding these birds up so that they get stronger, as well as any birds that will need antibiotics or any other specialized treatment. With an oiled bird, we will, once the bird is strong enough, we will wash the bird, clean its feathers, and then the next part of the whole rehabilitation is to swim the birds so that their feathers are all nice and waterproof. And during this whole process, we are also bleeding the birds once a week to make sure that they're nice and healthy, they're not anemic or anything like that, and weighing them to make sure that they're putting on adequate amounts of weight. Once the birds are swimming for an hour at a time and they're nice and waterproof, they've put on adequate weight, and their blood parameters are all normal, we then consider those birds for release. So we do the whole process from when the bird is discovered on the island to getting that bird back out into the wild. Okay, traditionally SANCCOB has been linked to many oiling incidents, and that's primarily used to be our main function in terms of what we did at SANCCOB. So, for instance, in 2000, the Treasure sank, and we looked after close on 20,000 oiled birds. So SANCCOB has a little bit of experience when it comes to dealing with oiled penguins in particular. When oiled birds come in, the first thing we have to do is give them a lot of fluids, because they're generally very dehydrated because they haven't been able to swim and catch fish. So we need to give them a lot of fluids, as well as feed them up, make them nice and strong so that they can withstand the washing process. Once they are nice and strong, the washing is quite a vigorous process. It takes 2 people to wash a bird and another 2 people to rinse the bird. And this whole process, depending on how badly oiled a penguin is, takes approximately an hour to 2 hours per bird. So it's very labor intensive, but it's very important to get every single drop of oil off that bird, and then to also rinse off all the feathers from all the washing products. After the bird has been rinsed, he then will stand in a heated room with the infrared light to dry all his feathers up. And over the next few days, we will start forcing him to swim so that he can start regaining all his normal natural waterproofing. We get a few birds over the whole of our winter months coming in every single day, and we think this is from the rough seas affecting shipwrecks and little bits of oil trickling up to the surface, and the birds are getting oiled in that, as well as possibly in the rough seas the boats are cleaning their bilge tanks out at sea and the birds are getting oiled in that dirty water. And that chronic oiling we see every single year throughout the winter months, whereas an oil spill is normally quite a well-defined event that doesn't necessarily happen every year, but when it does happen, it can often be catastrophic. SANCCOB is now recognized as a world leader in responding to oil spills, and specifically oil spills that are affecting penguins. So if anybody finds a injured or oiled seabird on the South African coast, the first thing to do is to establish whether you can actually approach the bird, because if you can get close to the bird and even touch it, there's a good chance that there's something wrong with the bird. And then it's important to give us a call so that we can arrange to either collect this bird or ask you to take the bird to somewhere where we can collect it from. SANCCOB looks after all species of seabirds. So if you're walking on the beach or anything and you see a penguin or a cormorant or perhaps a gannet or a gull, these are all birds that we will look after. So these are all birds, if you can call us about those if you're worried about them at all. We do also look after other species such as oyster catchers or pelicans, all sorts of birds that generally eat fish. SANCCOB is also involved in a few research programs. One of these is a health survey of mainly African penguins in the wild, and this also fits our aim of trying to be proactive in terms of conservation of these species, to try and figure out levels of disease that may be present in the wild population, as well as what normal values are, so that we can manage these populations on the colonies more effectively if we need to respond to any sort of disease threat. The other project that we're also involved in is a African penguin chick bolstering project. And this is where we actively remove abandoned chicks from the islands and hand rear them at SANCCOB, because we know that hand reared chicks fare as well in the wild as naturally reared chicks. And this means that we are conserving penguin numbers, because these chicks would definitely die in the wild if they were not removed for hand rearing.
The public can help SANCCOB in many ways. One of the big ways that they can help is to volunteer their time. How they would go about that is they would call us, and we will then evaluate where they could fit into this team and we'd slot them in and keep them on our database. One of the other ways is SANCCOB has an unfunded mandate to respond to oil spills on the South African coast, and all our work that we do is funded through public donations or through foundations or projects that we run. So there's a way that you can really, really help. If you go on the website, it's www.sanccob.co.za. You can hit the donate button, you can adopt a penguin, you can adopt a chick, you can take care of a home pen bird. There's a million things you can do. You can buy beautiful things online. It's kind of a one-stop shop for people that love seabirds and especially penguins.
In 1956, the first full census of the species was conducted, and 150,000 pairs were counted. This was the tough little bird that had survived more than a century of persecution. In 2009, after another decrease, the global population fell by another 10%. There were only 26,000 pairs left. This is a loss of more than 80% of the pairs in just over 50 years, equivalent to around 90 birds a week, every week, since 1956. Each year, BirdLife International revises the red list for the bird species of the world. In May 2010, the African penguin was placed on the list of endangered species, which is a very sad situation indeed.
There are two places in South Africa to see African penguins going about their daily lives in colonies on the African mainland. One is just past Simonstown on the False Bay coast, at Boulders. This is well signposted, and the boardwalks give the visitor ample viewing height to appreciate the penguins. The second location is at Betty's Bay, about 90 kilometres from Cape Town, on one of the most scenic drives in the world. Take your time on Clarence Drive, and if you're there in whale season between June and December, look out for whales. The colony at Betty's Bay is very interesting, and the area that the penguins have chosen is on the site of an old whaling station. The staff are very friendly, helpful and knowledgeable on their area and the penguins. The number of African penguins in southern Africa today is of great concern. These tough little creatures that have survived through so much are facing a very bleak future indeed. They are staring extinction in the face. Humankind is literally exterminating the African penguin. With losses of over 60% of the population between 2000 and 2010, the African penguin is in deep trouble, and if this trend continues, they will most certainly become extinct.